Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony. I have 5 minutes. I have 5 questions, so I'll try and move quickly, and I'd be grateful to you if you could do the same. Mr. Black, most of these questions are for you. As you stated, you were the head of CTC until, I think, about 4 months ago.
Yes, sir.
And in your prepared testimony, you had indicated that before 9/11 of last year, Hezbollah had really been perceived as probably the greatest terrorist threat. The question I have for you is, could you give us as of the date that you left CTC, can you give us the hierarchy of priorities? I assume Al-Qaeda was number one by that point.
Yes, sir. I have to apologize if I misspoke. I didn't mean it like that. I said, I was trying to convey the sense that there was not only Al-Qaeda, there was Hezbollah, and up until 9/11, Hezbollah had killed more Americans.
Correct.
So I'm not saying they were ahead.
As of the date you left, it would have been Al-Qaeda, presumably would have been number one.
Al-Qaeda would have been first. This is a list of particularly, what I'd rather do is give you the criteria. Essentially, it makes it easier. The highest criteria for us are terrorist groups that say they want to kill us, have the capability to kill us, and have killed us. In continue. So essentially, if you look at that, that would be the highest. The greatest threat to the United States would be like Al-Qaeda.
Let me cut to the chase.
Please.
I was sort of laying a predicate there. As of May, when you left, where would Iraq have been on the priority list of terrorist threats to our country?
It's a good question, but it's sort of the wrong shop. That is a state sponsor of terrorism. I deal with the outgrowth of that. I don't specifically address countries.
Well, we're now
themselves.
in the business of trying to analyze the nexus between state sponsorship and other terrorist organizations. But in any event, with other questions, I'll just move on. That obviously is a question of some moment.
Yes,
right
it
now.
is, and I don't think it would be a good idea, certainly for me, to address that here.
The question of the use of lethal force, we can't get into that in any detail here. But as you know, there's a prohibition against that. Occasionally, the chief executive of the country can authorize certain activities that don't involve that, but might involve that. The lawyers get involved, et cetera, and understandably, there's a reluctance on the part of your former shop to read too much into those kind of things. Is it your opinion that we should revisit the policy and consider revoking the prohibition against the use of lethal force?
In my view?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Black, you mentioned during your testimony that laws and rules, you mentioned at least one occurrence where laws and rules against contaminating criminal investigation with intelligence information sort of hampered the cooperation between yourselves and the FBI. Could you give us a list, or if not a list, at least the top examples of the laws and the rules that you think we should take a look at to perhaps improve to make your job and the job of the FBI easier in terms of discharging your duties in terms of protecting the country?
I'm unprepared to answer that question. I'd have to research and get back to you.
Well, I would appreciate it if you would,
Sure.
because obviously looking forward, we want to examine those things that you view or your
Yes,
colleagues in the
understand.
FBI view as impediments, and
Right.
look for ways that we can address those impediments to better accomplish the mission that we all share here. So if you would
Yes,
do
sir.
that, I would appreciate
certainly
it.
do that.
My next question deals with, and I think Mr. Watson has addressed this, and I apologize, Mr. Black, if you've addressed this as well, about one of the big picture issues we have to address is not only whether we should have some systemic changes in terms of the management of intelligence globally, but whether we should follow the British example and the example of other countries in terms of having a separate domestic intelligence capability. And I think Mr. Watson spoke that things have changed in his view since the 70s and the 80s. It's a little bit different now. Do you have an opinion about that? Whether we should adopt the British model, the Israeli model, some others, or whether we should try and work within the current structure to meet that responsibility?
I would have to look at it in some detail for a definitive answer. One could go either way. But the FBI is positioned with exceptionally good people. They can certainly do this job. What it requires is a different sort of training, different sort of mindset. And I'm sure they're up to it and can be done. If they can't, then of course there's a problem. But I have every confidence that they can. It requires looking at problems in a different way, as opposed to law enforcement. It is intelligence collection and operations.
That's one of the big big picture questions that we have to answer. I'm down to my last question. If I can sneak one in here. It's been my impression since joining the committee that we're still suffering the after effects of the 60s and the 70s, and really a withdrawal from many areas of human intelligence, at least in the aggressive sense abroad. We're attempting to reconstitute that, but aren't quite where we need to be yet. And as a result of that, we're more reliant upon some of our allies who have the right assets in the right places. Mr. Black, how long, if I'm correct, first of all, am I correct? And if so, how long will we be overly reliant upon others for that kind of capability? How long will it take us to we can be more independent in terms of protecting our country?
Well, I think we are independent. I think it's a combination of the two, sir.
Have the assets that we really need.
Have the assets that we really need as function of assets that we really need as function of resources and people. We have to put the trainers in place. We have to recruit the right kind of people here. We have to do much, much more. I hate to say this won't sound very clever, of what we're doing already. And then we get people out there and produce. I don't want to minimize the relationship with others.
Well, my last comment would be, and again, thank you for the chair's forbearance, if given a blank check, how long would it take?
Blank check. Be speculation, sir. I can give, it depends what type of comprehensive defense you're looking for. They'll never be 100%, so you could give me everything and I can't get 100%. But it would go down something from there. Be speculative.
Thank you.